Professor Shyam Kamath is Associate Dean and Professor of Global Business and is the author of quite a few works on sovereign wealth funds, the political economy of suppressed markets, and other things, as I said, you can see in your flyer for the event. Professor Kamath.
Thank you very much. I'm going to change the focus and essentially argue that the financial crisis, both the causes and the solutions, have global dimensions which are very important for us to recognize. First, I will again follow a bullet-pointed approach given the time. So I want to make 3 points about the causes of the current global financial crisis. Point one, the causes of the crisis are global. They are driven by the global imbalances that the international financial system has created because of 4 major changes that have occurred since the 80s. Point one, the major changes that have occurred in the global information technology and communications revolution. This has fundamentally changed the nature of global and domestic finance. Number 2, global government deregulation and the increasing move to flexible exchange rates, with other financial institutions not adjusting to these changes. That has been at the root cause of the current financial crisis. Number 3, financial market globalization and the increasing exchange rate flexibility have combined to create a completely new situation where financial markets are linked, where what happens in one market affects another market, and fundamentally the China-America link is a very important element in this. And finally, the addition of those formerly communist socialist economies to the world trading system has created this crisis. Let me just briefly take a moment to give the second cause. The movement of large amounts of money capital today, which dwarf government money movements, have resulted in large global imbalances, such as the China-US global imbalance. And finally, the globalization of financial markets has meant that domestic policy has been emasculated and international economic policy now runs the roost. So let me just briefly capsule the China-US relationship and how the current financial crisis has its roots in it. As a result of the Asian financial crisis in 1997-98, what essentially happened was that China and the other countries in Asia took a lesson from this. And what they did was, in order not to run current account deficits and then have runs on their currency with the previous pegged exchange rate system, what they essentially did was to run current account surpluses through their export-led growth, and then take and sterilize, particularly in the case of China, the foreign exchange earnings that had been earned by the exporters. Sterilization meant that these reserves, the official reserves of the central banks, built up. And these reserves now had to be recycled as capital account deficits from those countries, but had to be directed into other economies. And the United States became the preeminent repository or recipient of these financial flows, thus leading to the, in 1998-2000, to the dot-com boom and then the bust, as domestic precipitating causes and loss of confidence led to the collapse. That was followed by 9/11, but back came those same flows which were flowing into the United States, which inflated the market and combined with malfeasance led to the collapse. So essentially, if the situation has to be changed, the global imbalances, the 1.4 trillion or 1.8 trillion, depending on which period you choose, of foreign exchange reserve just with China, the 5.3 trillion that are with the Asian economies, those are going to continue to build as the economies recover. So in Professor Williams' long term, we're going to have the same problem. In spite of the great measures that my colleagues have talked about, those problems are going to reoccur. So fundamentally, the game has changed. And so in the form of solutions, what can be done and what needs to be done is as follows, and my colleagues will expand on this, but essentially, countries like China have to move from export-led growth to domestic spending also, and have to start slowly moving away from the pegged exchange rate policy that they have towards one where the economy adjusts, domestic spending increases, and they, instead of recycling those surpluses to the United States, become themselves engines of growth. So this is the first thing that has to happen. The second long-term change that has to take place is the fears that led to the many financial crises that Professor Allen talked about. Many of those fundamentally are currency crises that have led to financial crises. If that has to be prevented in the emerging economies, not only have they to change their domestic spending habits, what they have to do is we have to have a financial system that allows them to accelerate the use of domestic currency, so the development of domestic bond markets. The US has a very advantageous position because of the dollar. It is the currency, the debt of those countries is held in a foreign currency, while our liabilities are in our own currency. So if the dollar slides, we actually improve our position because of that, because our liabilities decrease, and those countries get into trouble. So the only solution to that is to try to get some kind of domestic bond market going and a domestic emerging market index, which can solve the currency mismatch problem. So I just want to conclude by pointing out that these financial crises, in line with Professor Allen, these financial crises are likely to continue unless we make institutional change. So long term, it's an institutional change, more globalization, more private markets, more move towards getting property rights in emerging economies, and flexible financial policy. My argument is that fundamentally the future is unknowable. Therefore, we can only work on policy at policies on the margin. It has to be institutions that take the brunt of the change. With that, I'll conclude and keep the rest of the points for the discussion. Thank you.